I've started reading this book here, Le modèle et l'invention, Messiaen et la technique de l'empreinte. It's in French, so it's slow going. My reading French is better than my spoken French, but still, this is something I need to read with a Russe. French dictionary, close at hand. But it is a subject, one of the reasons that I particularly resonate with Messiaen, right? Is I've done on this channel a whole series of videos where I talk through technique de mon langage musical, which Messiaen wrote to describe or to explain or to work out for himself kind of his melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic principles. And throughout the book, through the textbook, it's not really a textbook, it's got tons of examples, but not really questions, but both harmonically, rhythmically, he's very interested in static models, right? So harmony that's derived from modes of limited transposition. So chords that don't have a functional meaning. They don't fit in in the existing sort of tonic dominant harmonic construct that we think of in the West. And the same with rhythm, non-retrogradable rhythm, rhythmic patterns that if you reverse them, they stay the same. So then those elements are augmented or contracted with the addition of rhythmic values or the subtraction of rhythmic values, the addition of notes or the subtraction of notes. But they start from what I think of as this intersection of essentially static material, and that points to, I think, Messiaen's direct experience of the spirit, the spiritual realm, the spiritual world. Because he speaks of that within Catholic liturgy, but I think it resonates very generally with the spirit. Okay, so that's one reason. I love the music. I love the way he thinks about it as pointing to the infinite. But one of the other elements of his writing that just make me feel very familiar with him, in the technique, he talks about the compositional filter, where he'll say, he's got something in mind, and the examples he uses are things like Mussorgsky or Ravel, nothing obscure. And then around that, he has this compositional prism. We might be thinking of a melody by Mussorgsky, but it will be filtered through these harmonic and rhythmic techniques. And that just makes so much sense to me that I kind of think it's how every composer is working. That there's just stuff we have in our heads, and we sit down and write it, and then it comes through, like our physical manifestation today, which includes the level of craft that we have as composers. What we think is important, what we know. And I think what Messiaen does is really articulate that. I would bet those of you who are composers out there, I will ask you, does that resonate with you? Now, I'm not talking about sampling. I'm not talking about quotation. I'm not talking about taking, although we do that as well, right? We reference specifically Beethoven's Fifth or a Bach cantata or fill in the blank, right? and actually quote it and maybe write variations on it. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about just an oomph in the background that turns into something different. It made me think of a piece I'm going to play. I'm going to interject it here. All right, so I'm editing, and here's some sad news. That piece I was talking about, I really wanted to play as an example. I realized I wrote it in 2003, which it's 21 years ago, and this is the only copy of it I have. And this disc won't work. I have a couple of different optical drives, but this is a 21-year-old CD-ROM, CDR, whatever, CU. It says right here, sound backup. Some of these things are real. I felt for sure I had it on SoundCloud, but I don't. So you'll just have to imagine it, and my apologies and my disappointment. I have a box of things like this. I've always thought, well, they're kind of a treasured archive of old stuff. Maybe they're all like this. Maybe they've all deteriorated. From 15 years ago, it's a long time ago. It's a piece I was using electronics for, and in this case, I did actually sample a recording, 4 or 5 tracks, and each one of them comes from like a 30-second sample of a recording that is particularly important to me. So the one I'm going to play here is actually the opening chords of Zadok the Priest, which I just I love that piece. The Bach Chaconne for solo violin, the opening piano from the Beatles. You never give me your money, you only send me your invitation. The piano. A short snippet from a guitar solo from Prince, I think from Sexy Motherfucker, I can't remember. But in a less nuanced way than what Messiaen is talking about, it's the same process. It's like, these are pieces that at that time were just in my mind and in my circulation, my rotation. And with electronics, I could manifest the morphing of the sound directly. Now, if you were to hear, when you hear these pieces, and I'll put a link to the whole album, there's no way that you would have heard those and recognized the underlying source in the beginning. And the same with Messiaen, his borrowing, when he's done with it, you're like, yeah, no, Messiaen, Olivier, you would just sit down. You know, you might have sat down with, Bach. And you end up with start through my fingers to that, which actually that was kind of nice. I've got a recording of it now. Maybe next week I'll write that out. It'd be a little prelude. Would I call it Prelude After Bach? No, there's no way that it's anything to do with that. It's borrowing and then filtering. Now, this is a very big book, and that's because Messiaen wrote quite a lot about this and gave enough examples that you can really extend it and look at other music that he's written and look to see where he's borrowing from himself. I mean, I'm only a little bit into the book. But Christopher Brent Murray, I think, has written that. There's some articles that summarize this approach. And so you see there's tons of examples. This would be a great book to do as a as a walkthrough. Maybe I could do like six videos where I'm saying 6, maybe it would be 60. Let me know if you would like that, if that would be interesting. This was quite a hard book to find, even today when you can just find any book. Partly because I balked a little bit of paying it, 65 euros, plus whatever shipping it was. I probably spent $100 on that book. I haven't read it yet. It's been sitting on my shelf for years. But I've been thinking about the next project, Messiaen project, having really finished the review of the techniques. So anyway, if I haven't already, I'm going to play that piece. The album is called Some of These Things Are Real, which also represents like what I was thinking at the time. I hadn't read the Messiaen then, but I was aware that I was perceiving things and experiencing things differently. And that was in part because I'd lost hearing in this ear. I was losing, I'm totally dead. I was losing hearing in this ear. I'm wearing a hearing aid. That was funny. I hit my hearing aid and Siri thought I was done with the recording. So hopefully this is all going to work. So yeah, I was very aware that my hearing was damaged, and yet it was still producing information and experience. Look, I would never say that I was exploring that in my composition, but I can look back and say for that period of time when I was really first coming to terms with I was writing exclusively electronic music, and I was writing very much music that was noise, right? So pretty obvious in retrospect what was happening, but it wasn't so clear at the time. And I listened to these pieces, and I think they're pretty good. I would include them in the archive. So let me know what you think. Listen to the album. Now you know what the underlying sources are. You don't need to, right? It's like with the Elgar, the Enigma variations. You don't need to know what the variation is. Although I did just see Bernstein say he's pretty sure it was Auld Lang Syne, I think. But who cares? But now you know. Now you know a little bit about the biography and the biology and the underlying samples. I will definitely be coming back to this book in this Decomposing Messiaen series because I think it's going to be occupying me for a while. It looks like the book is organized by the approach and then a chapter on different composers that Messiaen borrowed from. Borrowing might not be the right word. The French word is empruntage. Emprunté. It's more like an influence, an influencing. Anyway, again, as always, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon.